Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to our video on McLaren. We're thrilled to have you here. The McLaren, also known as the McLaren-Honda, was one of the most successful and dominant Formula One car designs of all time. Powered by Honda's Ray 1.5-liter turbo engine and driven by teammates Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna, the car competed during the 1988 Formula One season. The design of the car was led by American engineer Steve Nichols. Honda had provided the Constructors Championship-winning engines of 1986 and 1987, and for 1988 they switched partners from Williams to McLaren, who had struggled with their dated TAG-Porsche engines. The engine's design and development was led by Osamu Goto. The MP was a distinctly lower design than the previous years, forcing the drivers into a more reclined, almost lying down driving position. In the 1988 season, the MP won all but one race and claimed all but one pole position. The team won the year's Constructors title with about 3 times as many points as runners-up Ferrari. It holds the record for highest percentage of laps led in a season with 97.3%, 1,003 out of 1,031. The car held the record for the highest win rate in a season until 2023, when the record was broken by the Red Bull Racing RB, which was also powered by a Honda turbocharged engine, 95.45% win rate. As we progress, let's shine a spotlight on Origins and examine its intricate interplay within our topic. In 1987, it was becoming increasingly difficult for McLaren to compete with major manufacturer-backed teams using, effectively, a privateer engine financed in-house by TAG and built by Porsche. The Steve Nichols designed McLaren TAG won 3 races, with Alain Prost finishing 4th in the Drivers' Championship. Prost's win in Portugal was cause for celebration, as it was the Frenchman's 28th career win, taking him past the previous record of 27 wins by triple world champion Jackie Stewart. The car was good enough to finish second in the Constructors Championship, secure the services of Ayrton Senna, and persuade Honda to switch its engine supply deal from Williams to McLaren for the following season. For the following year, 1988, McLaren secured the use of the Honda turbo engines, which since the middle of the season had been the best engine in Formula One. With the engines coming at the expense of Williams, who had won the previous 2 Constructors' Championships, a strong 1988 was possible. Team boss Ron Dennis had previously tried to secure Honda engines for his Formula 2 team, and welcomed the Japanese company after 4 successful years with the TAG engines. Most teams were making a concerted effort to establish themselves with naturally aspirated cars in 1988 because it was due to be the last year for the turbo engines before they were banned. Steve Nichols went ahead with the design of the car on a pure turbo engine basis, which put the team at a potential disadvantage to their rivals. It was a transition year prior to naturally aspirated only Formula in 1989. The regulations were framed to reward those teams that had already made the switch. Over a race distance, the MP would suffer a significant power deficit compared to its naturally aspirated rivals. The car had the luxury of being able to modulate boost, but with a fuel tank allowance of only 150 litres, naturally aspirated cars were unlimited. It meant that the team would have to go into extreme fuel conservation to get to the end of a race. Although there was speculation that Honda would introduce their engine during 1988, Ron Dennis confirmed during qualifying for the Italian Grand Prix at Monza that racing the was never part of the plan for 1988. By keeping the engine, Honda and McLaren also gave themselves more development time on the 1989 car, which was an evolution of them. With the TAG at their disposal and a fuel tank size of 195 litres down from 220 litres, McLaren proved that the concept did work, with redesigned side pods also getting the treatment. Only the nose section remained as a visual reminder of the MP, though it too was lower and approximately 10% smaller. The improved aerodynamics helped Prost and Stefan Johansson to be closer to the more powerful Honda-powered cars than they might have been with the older design, although the team was hampered by unreliability which had crept into the TAG engines, which had been redesigned in 1987 to cope with the lower fuel limit and the FIA's controversial pop-off valve which restricted turbo boost to just 4 bar. The team was able to build on this and, with the smaller Honda and a reduction in fuel tank size from 195 to 150 litres, the sleek-looking, all-new was produced and first appeared early in 1988. It was one of the few competing cars that year that was an all-new car. Ferrari, Lotus, Arrows, Tyrrell, and others were using updated or developed versions of their previous year's cars in order to build new cars for the 1989 season when turbocharged engines would be outlawed altogether. Now, let's delve into the intricacies of team performance and explore its various aspects. The situation improved immensely when Ayrton Senna was signed to partner Alain Prost at Prost's suggestion on a 3-year contract. The McLaren chassis, the Senna and Prost pairing, and finally the new Honda Ray engines with looked like a formidable combination. However, there were concerns after the FIA introduced a fuel regulation for the turbo-powered cars of 150 litres for a race distance. Honda's engine management team worked feverishly on the fuel consumption of the Ray, which was specially built for the reduction in turbo boost from 4 bar to 2.5 bar rather than upgrading the 1987 spec engine, trying to improve it in order to avoid embarrassing late race retirements. The car appeared as is through the season, save for a few aerodynamic revisions. The car arrived at the first race in Brazil with very little pre-season testing at Imola only a week before the race, but Senna was able to put the car on pole position by half a second from surprise second-place qualifier Nigel Mansell driving the naturally aspirated Williams Juv, with Prost qualifying third after not finding the balance of his car until the race morning warm-up session. One feature of them was the driver's position. Due to the car's low-slung aerodynamics and the FIA safety rule which stated that the top of a driver's helmet had to be below an imaginary straight line drawn from the top of the roll bar to the top of the cowling, the drivers were required to be in a reclining position rather than in the conventional upright seating position of rival contemporary Grand Prix cars. Senna had absolutely no problems with the seating position. Prost, being smaller, preferred to be slightly more upright, and because of his size, the team was able to accommodate this without modification. As the MP was a new car, it had to conform to FIA's new for 1988 safety regulations which stipulated that the driver's feet be behind the line of an imaginary front axle. Teams running cars from the previous season were able to continue to do so under the earlier regulations for which they had been designed. Before 1988, the most dominant car seen in a single season had been McLaren's 1984 car, the John Barnard designed, which had won 12 of the 16 races that year driven by Prost, and world champion Niki Lauda. Lauda had defeated Prost in the Drivers' Championship by only half a point. However, the MP's successes eclipsed them not only in wins but in qualifying performance. 1988 was almost a walkover for McLaren, who took 15 victories from 16 races, including 10 1-2 finishes, while Prost finished first or second in the 14 races he finished. He had 2 retirements, Britain and Italy. The car also sat on pole position in 15 of the 16 races, including a record 13 poles for Senna, locked out the front row in 12 races, and also set 10 fastest race laps. The dominant run was only interrupted once, at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza for round 12, when Senna crashed out of the lead with only 2 laps remaining while lapping Jean-Louis Schlesser, who was making his first and only start for Williams in place of Mansell, who was suffering from chickenpox. With Prost already out after a rare engine failure, Gerhard Berger claimed an emotional victory for Ferrari just a month after the death of Ferrari founder Enzo Ferrari. Perhaps the most telling example of the MP's emphatic domination was seen at San Marino in just the second race of the season. Senna and Prost both qualified the 5.04 3.131 Imola circuit in the ERS, Senna 0.7 faster than Prost, while no other driver could get below 1:30. Third on the grid was defending world champion Nelson Piquet in his Lotus Ert, which used the same 1988 specification Honda engines as McLaren. Piquet could only qualify in 3.352 seconds slower than Senna and 2.581 seconds slower than Prost. The Lotus actually recorded faster speed trap figures, 1.5 faster than the McLarens on the run to Tosa, but around the rest of the circuit the McLaren's acceleration and downforce were unmatched. Despite this, both Piquet and Lotus boss Peter were told the assembled media at Imola that they believed their car to be better aerodynamically and therefore more fuel efficient than them. However, both McLarens have lapped the entire field, including third-placed Piquet, by lap 55 of the 60-lap race. The fast Imola circuit with its long periods of full-throttle racing was notoriously hard on fuel, especially for the turbo cars which had seen numerous late race retirements in recent years, and the McLarens lapping the field at the speed they did prove the aerodynamic efficiency of the car as well as the work Honda had undertaken to reduce fuel consumption. Prost and Senna's fastest laps, again the only drivers under 1:30, were 1.5 seconds faster than the next fastest, Gerhard Berger's Ferrari. Piquet's fastest lap was only the 9th fastest of the race, and some 2.8 seconds slower than Prost's fastest lap of. Both Prost and Senna lapped faster in the race than Piquet had qualified, putting an exclamation mark on McLaren's dominant weekend. The car retired only 4 times in the season, with Prost retiring at Silverstone during a very wet British Grand Prix handling, and at Monza for the Italian Grand Prix engine, the only in-race engine failure McLaren suffered all season, along with Senna's infamous accidents at Monaco where he totally dominated qualifying and by lap 66 of the race had built a 50-second lead over Prost, who had been stuck for 54 laps behind Berger, only to throw it away by crashing into the barriers at Portier. As he lived in Monaco, Senna went back to his home and did not contact the team until that night when he finally returned to the pits as the team was packing up. Such was his disappointment. And Monza. Monaco was another example of McLaren's domination. Senna qualified 1.4 seconds faster than acknowledged Monaco master Prost, who himself was 1.2 seconds faster than third-placed Gerhard Berger in his Ferrari. During the season, both McLarens qualified for a race over 1 second faster than the rest of the field on 6 occasions: San Marino, Monaco, Germany, Portugal, Japan and Australia, while the team achieved 15 pole positions, 13 for Senna and 2 for Prost to go along with the 15 wins. Only Gerhard Berger's pole position at Silverstone prevented a perfect pole record for McLaren. Britain was the only race where neither McLaren qualified on the front row, with Ferrari's Michele Alboreto qualifying second, Senna and Prost occupying the second row. Britain was also the only race of the season that Ayrton Senna didn't qualify his McLaren Honda on the front row of the grid. Prost failed to qualify on the front row 4 times during the season: Brazil, Detroit, Britain and Hungary. Hungary saw the worst qualifying position for a McLaren in 1988 when Prost was only 7th fastest. Senna, as usual, was on pole at the tight Hungaroring, though only 0.108 in front of Nigel Mansell's Williams Judd. Other than at Silverstone, this was the closest any car got to knocking one of them off pole position. It was during qualifying at Hockenheim in Germany that set its top speed record and the fastest speed trap of the 1988 season, when both Senna and Prost achieved on the 1.6 long straight that took the cars into the forest they had recorded during qualifying for round 4 in Mexico at the Autódromo Hermanos Rodriguez on its long front straight. Both speeds compared favorably to the fastest non-McLaren, the Ferrari of Berger, who trapped at Hockenheim, and the fastest of the non-turbos, the slippery Adrian Newey-designed March Judd of Morcio Gudelman, which was trapped at, also in Germany. However, with the reduction in engine power from the levels of 1986 and 1987, the McLaren Honda's top speed was slower than the fastest speed of 1987 Nelson Piquet in a Williams Honda at Monza, and slower than had been achieved in 1986 Gerhard Berger in a Benetton BMW, also at Monza. At Silverstone, McLaren introduced revised aerodynamics to them, doing away with the turbo snorkels which force-fed air to the turbos located on the top of the side pods. While this proved troublesome on the first day of qualifying, with both drivers feeling it created an imbalance in the cars, and the snorkels reintroduced for the rest of the British GP weekend, it was the last time the snorkels were seen on them for the rest of the season, as testing at Silverstone the week after the British Grand Prix had shown the imbalance was caused by incorrect suspension settings on the cars and not by the removal of the snorkels. Team boss Ron Dennis estimated that the research and development on the revised aerodynamics had cost the team somewhere around £150,000 sterling for something that even Steve Nichols considered a minimal aerodynamic gain and gave no extra horsepower to the Honda engine. Nichols also dispelled the myth that somehow Honda had managed to get around the Fees pop-off valves and that their engines in the McLarens somehow had around more horsepower than are often quoted. As he pointed out, there was no getting around the fact that the cars could only carry 150 litres of fuel per race, and the alleged extra horsepower would have meant not finishing on the allowable fuel, plus winning made them an obvious target of the FISA scrutineers who meticulously checked and rechecked the size of each car's fuel tank after every race. Senna's chief mechanic in 1988, Neil Trundle, also confirmed that the Honda engines basically ran on what was generally termed rocket fuel or jungle juice that was supplied by team sponsors Shell, with the fuel consisting of a special blend made up of around 84% taurine, 16% methanol for qualifying and around 60-40 tolumethanol for racing. Other than the 4 retirements, the lowest finishing position for them was a 6th in round 13 in Portugal, and 4th in the next race in Spain, with both recorded by Senna. During both races, his car was hampered by fuel readout problems which forced him to run slower than he otherwise could have in order to have enough fuel to finish. Both races were won by Alain Prost. Those lower finishing places in the top 6 actually helped Senna's championship position as, under the best 11 scores rule, he could drop both, whereas Prost, who only ever finished first or second in the 14 races he finished, had to drop 3 of his second-place finishes. At the end of the season, McLaren-Honda had taken both the Constructors and Drivers titles, Senna edging out Prost due to winning more races. Only the 11 best results counted, so even though Prost scored more overall points, Senna's 8 first-place finishes to Prost's 7 meant Senna took the championship title. McLaren-Honda, who scored a then record 199 points in the Constructors Championship, wrapped up the Constructors title with a 1-2 finish in Belgium for round 11 of the 16-race season. It was the team's 8th 1-2 finish of the season. Senna and Prost would finish 1-2 twice more, in Japan and Australia. The team finished the season a massive 134 points in front of second-placed Ferrari. Them would be succeeded by the Honda-powered McLaren, although statistically not as successful as them, more because others such as Ferrari, Williams and Benetton improved rather than McLaren and Honda faltered. The 1989 car would give the team another Constructors' Championship, with Prost and Senna finishing 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship. A modified car, the MPB, was used as a test mule for Honda's new 3.5-litre designed around the new regulations for the season banning turbocharged engines. According to some McLaren personnel at the time, including Steve Nichols, front-end designer Matthew Jeffries and chief mechanic Neil Trundle, the test mule was actually faster and arguably a better car than 1989 and S highly successful and pub designed by Neil Oatley cars that brought the team 2 Drivers' Championships, 2 Constructors' Championships, 16 wins, 27 poles, 12 fastest laps and 36 overall podium finishes from the 32 races ran over those 2 years. As we enter this new chapter, let's navigate the complexities of acceleration data and unravel its multifaceted nature. According to the January 1989 issue of Sport Auto, the McLaren had the following acceleration data. 040 1.3 S050 1.5 S060 1.8 S070 2 S080 2.3 S090 2.6 S0100 2.8 S0100 and 3.3 S0100 and 3.9 S0100 and 4.2 S0100 and 64.4 S0100 and 85 S0200 5.6 S. As we progress, let's zoom in on other and examine its role in shaping our overall narrative. The was voted the greatest Formula One car of all time by a panel of Formula One engineers and designers. It was also voted greatest race car of the 20th century by Autosport readers. Steve Nichols has said that he was honored to lead the McLaren design team, including Matthew Jeffries, Dave North, Bob Bell, Hugh Moran, Dave Nielsen, Tim Wright, Colin Smith, Mike Locke, and Paul Merritt. He thought that the was the culmination of all the experience and effort of all the McLaren people who worked so hard to design, produce and race this car, and that it was the perfect validation of the concept of teamwork. Senna's was included in the 2001 video game Gran Turismo 3 under the aliases Japanese and American NTSC Skook versions and Polyphony European PAL version. The in its actual, licensed version would later reappear in Gran Turismo 7 as part of the 1.2 update. The was one of 3 car choices in the 1988 Accolade computer game Grand Prix Circuit. The game was available for Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Apple IIGS, Commodore 64, DOS and ZX Spectrum. The was released as downloadable content in Forza Motorsport 6. In 2017, the is available as a classic Formula One car in the special edition of the game or as downloadable content. It is available for free in the following 2018, 2019 and 2020. The has been added to the mobile game Rail Racing 3 version 6 by Fireman Kais, an EA studio, in December 2017. The game is available for Apple iOS devices, Android devices, Nvidia Shield, and Amazon Kindle Fire. The has a Lego Icons set made of its set No, released on 1 March 2024. The set also includes an Ayrton Senna minifigure. Now, let's shift our focus to overview and embark on an intellectual exploration of its various dimensions. For the 1988 season, 6 cars were molded from carbon fiber with assistance from Hercules Aerospace. The chassis numbers 1 through 6 were used throughout the year. All 6 chassis still exist, with chassis and beings still owned by the McLaren Group. Chassis is usually on display at the McLaren Technology Center and was driven by Sergio Perez at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2013. It was also displayed at Goodwood for McLaren's 60th anniversary in 2024. Chassis has been displayed at the National Motor Museum, UK in the Prost livery, and was driven by Bruno Senna at Goodwood in 2009 in the Senna livery. Chassis is owned by a private collector in Chicago, Illinois, USA, and has been on display at McLaren of Chicago after being driven by Bruno Senna at Interlagos in 2019. Chassis was previously on loan and displayed at the Donington Grand Prix exhibition, but was relocated and displayed at McLaren Osaka Hako. It was relocated again to Museo y Circuito Fernando Alonso in Asturias, Spain by 2016. As of 2022, it was in private ownership in the UK at Kiko Spaces. Chassis was on display at McLaren Auckland, New Zealand, for a number of years, but it was returned to the factory in Woking. As of 2025, it was owned by Nicholas and Shelley Schorsch as part of their Audrain collection based at Newport, Rhode Island, USA. It was also demonstrated by Prost at that year's Goodwood for the 75th anniversary of the World Championship. Chassis is owned by Honda and is sometimes on display at the Honda Collection Hall at Motegi. It ran at Goodwood in 2014 under Marlboro livery and driven by Takuya Izawa. Additionally, Honda owns a Shoka chassis Persa SSC for static show car, which is occasionally put on display including at the 2015 Tokyo Auto Salon and Honda Collection Hall. Let's transition to complete Formula One results and uncover its significance. Car results in bold indicate pole position, results in italics indicate fastest lap. Thanks for being a part of this amazing journey. I can't wait to bring you more exciting content.